Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. It is certainly wonderful to see all of you connecting with us today. I feel like our group time is a bit few and far between, but any day that we are together is a good day. I am Verna Best, and I'm the Program Operations Branch Chief. And prior to moving forward, I would like to give you a few of our standard instructions regarding our engagement during today's webinar. The first is that everyone has automatically been muted to ensure that we are able to respond to every question related to the ACSI. We are requesting that you enter questions using the Q&A pod. You are also welcome at this time to enter your name and agency affiliation, along with any other general comments throughout the webinar into the chat. The webinar is being recorded as we hope to post it later as a reference and resource. I would like to let you know that we are going to try and limit our engagement today to around 1 hour, and we kindly ask that if possible, you stay until the end of the webinar as we have some important reminders about upcoming quarterly calls, state and tribal plan submission, and 2 important polling questions to which we would like for you to respond. And since I mentioned questions, let me say that I know you likely have questions about some of the looming concerns around the future of many programs, including CSBG. We will not be addressing most of those questions today as we have no concrete information to share. However, know that we remain committed to providing any relevant updates or guidance as we are apprised. For now, let's focus on doing all we can to demonstrate this network's commitment to excellence and compliance with administering CSBG. I always have a quote, and today's is from Aristotle, who said, "We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act, but rather a habit." And I believe that our efforts to improve customer service at every level of the CSBG network are habits worth continuously improving and developing. So before I introduce our primary facilitator for the ACSI webinar, let me pause and welcome our Interim Director of the Division of Community Assistance, Cheryl Zuni, to greet us and make any remarks that she cares to make. Cheryl?
Thank you, Verna. Hello and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the 2024 American Customer Satisfaction Index, ACI service results of the CSBG eligible entities. I am Cheryl Zuni, and I am serving as the Interim Director of the Division of Community Assistance. We truly appreciate you joining today, and I hope that you find today's webinar beneficial as the ACSI survey helps us identify areas where we excel and do extremely well, and also helps us identify areas where we can strengthen as we strive to deliver superior services to our communities across the nation. With that, I will turn it back to Verna so we can get started.
Thanks, Cheryl. Let me just say that it has been my pleasure to work alongside of Ronika Carr, who is our program specialist who co-leads the ACSI activities, and Kelly Stollard of the CFI Group. Kelly is a program director at CFI Group and also serves as a consultant to the ACSI with over 25 years of experience in public policy and market research. Much of Kelly's work has centered on customer satisfaction and helping organizations better understand and improve the customer experience. Kelly has held leadership roles, many leadership roles, one of which was at the U.S. Government Accountability Office, and her experience spans domestic and international projects through which she has become skilled in a wide range of qualitative and quantitative research methods. Let's use our virtual emojis and welcome Kelly to guide us through the results of the American Customer Satisfaction Index. Kelly?
Thanks so much, Verna. And I will just share my screen and we can get started. Can you just confirm that you can see the screen just fine?
We can see you are set to go.
Perfect. Right, and I was going to turn off, I'll just leave it on. So welcome everybody. I'm pleased to be here this afternoon to share the results of the Eligible Entities Survey. My name is Kelly Stallard, as mentioned, and I've had the pleasure of working on this project for a number of years. So very familiar with the results from previous years, as well as what we came up with this year. In terms of an agenda, today's agenda is basically going to start out with an introduction to remind you a little bit about what the ACSI metric is all about and what the organization is all about, a little history there. Then I'll jump into talking about the specific program overview and the methodology, how we collected the data. I'm going to skip the executive summary. It's a text-heavy slide that just summarizes what we're going to talk about throughout the rest of the presentation. It provides a good reference if you are reviewing the deck at a later date, but I'm going to jump right into the Customer Satisfaction Index results, the drivers of satisfaction, the state association results, and talk a little bit about some recommendations at the end. There's also an appendix that you can refer to at a later date once the presentation is provided. So in terms of an introduction, the American Customer Satisfaction Index is a national indicator of customer evaluations of the qualities of goods and services available to U.S. residents. It's one of the only uniform cross-industry government measures of satisfaction. Since 1994, the ACSI has measured its cause and effects, customer satisfaction and its cause and effects for 10 economic sectors, 40 industries, and more than 400 private sector companies. Recently, the ACSI updated the federal government study to focus on measuring satisfaction with many of the agencies that the OMB has identified as high impact service providers. ACSI and the CFI group, two companies, basically one nowadays, we both use the ACSI methodology and were founded by Dr. Klaus Fernau. We have measured more than 100 programs of the federal government since 1999 using a customized proprietary research approach. Using this methodology has allowed us to benchmark between public and private sectors and provides information that's unique to each agency on how it interfaces with the public to affect customer satisfaction. The effects of customer satisfaction are then estimated in turn on specific objectives such as trust. And we'll talk a little bit about that later when we look at the model. But if you do want to learn more about the ACSI, the acsi.org and cfigroup.com are both great references. CFI has conducted a number of surveys with OCS since 2010. We did a survey of the Assets for Independence grantees. We've surveyed the Low-Income Home Assistance Program grantees, as well as the CSBG grantees. This is the 5th survey conducted of the eligible entities, and the first one was conducted in 2015. The questionnaire used for this study was designed to be agency-specific in terms of the activities measured, and the specific questions asked and the outcomes in the introduction to this questionnaire were all developed in cooperation with CSBG leadership. It does, however, follow a common format for all of the federal agency questionnaires so that you can do some benchmarking and use the ACSI patented model. In terms of why CSBG uses the ACSI, there are basically 3 reasons. 1, it informs performance on the federal and state accountability measures. Number 2, it provides a cause and effect model that helps identify specific improvements with the greatest impact on customer service, and you'll see that when we review the model. It also aids in targeting training and technical assistance needed to improve performance. In terms of the ACSI and the state accountability measures and their relationship, there are actually 7 of the state accountability measures that specifically use the ACSI survey and other feedback as appropriate to adjust the state plan to improve performance. In terms of the CSBG annual report, as part of the annual report submissions, states report on the state's most current ACSI overall satisfaction score, how the state considered feedback from its local agencies, what actions were taken as a result of the feedback, and an updated target for the overall satisfaction of local agencies in the state. So a strong tie with the annual report, and it's used extensively to inform that. Next, we'll look at the program overview and methodology. The program objective for OCS was to measure satisfaction of community service block grantee eligible entities to better understand how well the states, as part of the CSBG network, are delivering services to eligible entities to drive improvement in major areas addressed in the state accountabilities measure, and to determine where best to focus OCS training and technical assistance efforts for the state CSBG lead agencies. This survey was fielded from December 3rd, 2024 through February 6th, 2025. 970 surveys were sent and 546, I flipped those numbers, sorry. 546 were completed. As a result, we had a 56% response rate, which is excellent. Typically, when we survey grantees, we get a response rate between 20 and 30%. So 56% is a very excellent response rate. The response resulted in a confidence level of 80% plus or minus 1 at the state level and 90% plus or minus 1 for the aggregate data. I'm going to skip the executive summary, as I mentioned. This next slide, I'm not going to go over in depth either, but just want to mention that it does provide some information about how to interpret this satisfaction model, which I'm going to talk you through, but it's a great reference if you're reviewing the deck at a later date and need some refresher on some of what I shared. So this next slide is the OCS CSBG eligible entities satisfaction model. There's a lot of information on the slide, but don't worry, I'm going to walk you through it slowly from left to right and explain to you what each of the items represent. On the left-hand side, we have what we call satisfaction drivers. Those are basically the interfaces between the eligible entities and the states. They are things like communication, monitoring corrective action, linkages, distribution of funds, and so on. Each of these drivers of satisfaction aren't measured just based on one question. We ask 2 to 5 questions for each. We ask them on a 1 to 10 scale. We convert that 1 to 10 scale to a 0 to 100 scale. We average those scores, and that's what comprises the satisfaction driver score that you see on the far left-hand side there in those blue boxes. So for communication, the satisfaction driver score is 76. Monitoring and corrective action is 75, linkages 64, and so on. The teal boxes to the right-hand side are what we call impacts, and they are really kind of the special sauce to our methodology. They're what makes us different from the standpoint that they help agencies not only understand, they help agencies better understand their performance by helping them understand which of the areas have the highest impact on satisfaction. So without the impacts, you're left with kind of just looking for the lowest performing score and maybe putting your resources towards that. But that may not be the area that will provide you with the greatest influence on satisfaction. It might not move that needle. So what we encourage you to do is look at relatively low scoring satisfaction drivers with the higher impact levels. And those are the areas that are really going to be worthwhile in terms of focusing your efforts, focusing your resources in order to move the satisfaction needle up. In the center is the Customer Satisfaction Index. The index itself is measured based on 3 metrics. It's actually comprised of 3 metrics: overall satisfaction, satisfaction compared to expectations, and how well their experience compares to an ideal. As you may expect, often overall satisfaction score is a little bit higher compared to expectations and compared to ideal, kind of raise that bar in terms of what we're trying to measure. And it provides for an aspirational aspect of the index. Here you see overall satisfaction was 75 compared to expectations 70 and compared to ideal, or 73 and compared to ideal was 70. Rolling those together, we ended up with a CSI score of 73. Looking back at the satisfaction drivers, the way the model works is when you look at communication at 76, if you were to improve that satisfaction score from 76 by 5 points, you would expect then the CSI score to improve by the impact value of 2.7. Likewise, if you increase the monitoring and corrective action from 75 to 80, you would expect the ACSI score to improve 1 point. Depending on how the scores change, the impacts and the changes to the CSI score are additive. So if you change in more than one area, you can expect a higher or lower impact on the CSI score. Now going back over to the right-hand side, we have future behaviors. These are the items that we hope by working on improving satisfaction, these are the future behaviors that we anticipate from improving satisfaction. So we would we would expect that improved satisfaction would increase trust in the CSBG state lead agency, and it would also improve confidence in the CSBG state lead agency. To the far right-hand side are the performance metrics for each of those. Those are asked on just a single question, a 1 to 10 scale converted to 0 to 100, and this year's scores were 77 for both of those metrics. To the left-hand side are teal boxes again that represent impacts, and what those represent is what the impact value is of satisfaction onto those future behaviors. So in this case, if the CSI score were to improve from 73 to 78, both of those scores would improve by 5 points. That is my summary of the satisfaction model, but I want to take a pause here real quick and see if anyone has any questions, because I know that's a lot of information.
Give us just a moment, Kelly. I will check the Q&A pod to see if there are any questions in.
Yep,
I do see one in the chat that says, what is the N plus 456?
That's the sample size. N equals 546 survey responses that we received.
And the other portion of that question is that, yes, we do intend to share this presentation and the slides as soon as feasible. The next question says, how does this data compare to previous year's response data?
We're going to jump into that as we move forward. Every slide is going to show you how each of the satisfaction drivers compares over the course of the survey responses that we've done since 2015.
All right, Kelly, I think you can move forward.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so as promised, this very first slide shows the customer satisfaction index and how it has changed over time from 2015, where it was at a 65, to this year, it's at a 73. This year, it remained consistent with the 2021 score of 73, but we are up significantly compared to the 2015 score. Taking a quick look at the regions, 2025 regional CSI scores ranged from 64 for Region 5 to 87 for Region 3. 5 regional CSI scores show some level of improvement, with Region 2 showing the largest improvement, up 22 points to 70. 4 regional CSI scores did decline, but only 2 of them were considered statistically significant. Those were for Region 4 and Region 5. When we look at the state scores overall and we put them into percentiles, we see that 25% fell in the top percentile, or excuse me, the top quartile, which was 87 to 100. We saw 22% in the second quartile, 76 to 86. In the third quartile, which was from 64 to 75, we saw 16%. And then we did see 31% of the states fell in the 0 to 63, the bottom quartile. Taking a look at the top tier states, the 12 states that scored in the top quartiles, scoring 87 or above, are listed here in alphabetical order. So Colorado, Hawaii, Iowa, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, North Dakota, Tennessee, Utah, Vermont, Virginia, and Wisconsin. Congratulations to all those states for being top tier scoring states. Next, we'll look at the 2021 versus 2025 CSI scores. There was notable improvement in CSI for 11 states in 2025 as compared to 2021. The improvements ranged from 7 to 27 points. The average increase in CSI was 11 points. We did see 12 states receive ACSI scores that were significantly lower in 2025. The average decrease for those were 14 points. In terms of improvement, some of the most improved states are listed here. 11 states actually had significantly improved their CSI score since 2021. And those states were California, Idaho, Indiana, Louisiana, excuse me, Missouri, Nebraska, New York, North Dakota, South Dakota, Tennessee, and West Virginia. Congratulations on that improvement. Next, we're going to look at the future behaviors over time. This year, the future behavior score remained consistent with 2021, so both of them were at 77, but much higher than when we started back in 2015. It was at 69 and 70 for those two metrics. Just a quick note about the scores. As I mentioned, is the CSI score in particular tends to be tempered a bit by the high bar that we have in terms of asking people to compare things to ideal. So those scores are tempered, and we try to discourage people from looking at these scores as like a grade back in school. So a 70 is a C, an 80 is a B, a 90 is an A. Rather, we provide these guidelines to level set kind of where these scores should be or how these scores should be considered in terms of where they land. So we would consider an average score 60 to 69. A good score is 70 to 79, excellent 80 to 89, and exceptional 90 to 100. And just as a quick note, the overall average customer satisfaction index as measured by the ACSI for the federal government in 2024 was 70. And we see very few agencies or private companies who actually get an exceptional ACSI score. To put a little bit more context around the scores, here are some benchmarks. So you see here that the eligible entity score of 73 falls above the federal government overall average, and it falls in the higher level scores that we measure in the customer satisfaction index. So these are scores that were published in our 2024 results. And as you can see, the eligible entity score of 73 falls within the top 3 scores that we reported this year. Next, we'll look specifically at the drivers of satisfaction. This first one is communication. It has the highest impact at 2.7. At 76, it's not one of the lower scoring drivers, but it does provide an opportunity for improvement, and improvement in this particular area will improve overall satisfaction to the largest degree. We did see a 1-point decrease from 2021. That was driven basically by a significant decline in the score for frequency of communication. So you might want to take a look at that. If you're looking to address communication or to make any changes, that was the area that kind of drove that score down a bit. In addition to asking the 1 to 10 scaled questions, we also ask some open ends to provide some context around the scores that we report. In this case, we ask what kinds of information, if any, would you like to receive from the state's CSBG lead agency that you are not getting now? As you can see, we get some pretty good in-depth responses to our open-ended questions. I'm not going to sit and read all of these to you, but I would encourage you to take a look at them and reference them as you're building process improvement plans, as you're looking to determine what areas might need more focus. There are lots of suggestions in all of the open ends. For this one, just a couple. Agencies need to know more about funding and CSBG and LIHEAP. We need to know how much funding we will receive for the fiscal year at the beginning of the year. How can we plan without knowing? Another comment talked about the quality of the information received is often inconsistent. Another comment asks for maybe simply sharing what other state departments are doing from time to time to keep us apprised of a bit more broadly. So like I mentioned, lots of very specific comments that are offered in the open ends, and I would encourage you to take a look at those. Next, we have monitoring and corrective action. This is a driver that actually had a significant improvement from 73 to 75. 3 of the 6 specific attributes that we measured were up significantly from 2021. The consistency of monitoring improved significantly, adherence to the plan, and also usefulness of the visits. The other 3 also improved, but they weren't considered statistically significant. But all of that contributed to the significant improvement in that driver score. With an impact of 1, that's one of the higher impact satisfaction drivers. And so again, efforts to further improve that would improve the CSI score. In terms of an open-ended question related to this, we ask what, if any, suggestions do you have for how the state CSBG lead agency could improve its monitoring process? Again, I'll just read a couple of them, and then you can refer to them in the future. One was, fortunately, not much monitoring has occurred over the last few years since the pandemic. So feedback a little bit on how often monitoring is occurring. We also heard from one that said, consolidate standards to simplify the process. If an agency is accredited by a national body, accept that as a valid monitoring for CSBG, continue the technician and training assistance for improvement after monitoring is completed. And then just one more, make sure CSBG lead agency staff understand the real world issues that local agencies face. They make decisions on how we provide services without the knowledge of what happens at the grassroots level. So again, some really heartfelt, specific feedback in those open-ended questions. Next is linkages, and this particular driver measures awareness of efforts, sufficiency of linkages, and effectiveness of partnership. This year, the driver score did decrease from 66 to 64, just 2 points. It's not considered a statistically significant decrease, but it might be something that you'd want to pay attention to in terms of what's happening with linkages. There was a significant improvement in 2021, and that score decreased a bit since then. The next driver is distribution of funds. This actually, decreased significantly from 74 to 70. The 2 metrics that are used to calculate the score have to do with ensuring no interruption as well as quality of the process. And both of those items were significantly lower in 2025 than they were in 2021. It has a lower impact, but definitely an area that I would consider taking a look at in terms of process improvements going forward. Training and technical assistance, it actually improved by 1 point from 74 to 75. All of the related scores saw some increase, with all 4 attributes posting scores 1 or 2 points higher than 2021. In terms of open-ended responses, for this question, we ask, what, if any, additional training and technical assistance needs do you want the state CSBG lead agency to address? Some of the comments here, I believe the state needs to improve the opportunities available for ongoing, regularly scheduled training and not just rely on requests for training from the agencies. Other suggestions were regular OCEAN training for new hires, annual ROMA training, training on monitoring requirements and expectations, training on standard assessments, sessions devoted to highlighting best practices with grantees across the state. And a final one, fiscal and program staff should receive quarterly training at a minimum. Separate training should be provided to incoming staff to orient them to CSBG policies and network. The training should align with the state plan and changes made throughout the year. So again, just a taste of those comments, and would encourage you to take a look at them in more detail in the future. The next driver is use of discretionary funds. This driver was down 1 point from 69 to 68. This was driven by a metric related to responsiveness to needs. That score declined from 71 to 68, and that was considered a statistically significant change. Development of the CSBG state plan. I just want to clarify here, while it says it has an impact of 0, impacts are relative metrics. So it doesn't literally mean that the development of the CSBG plan has no impact. It's just in relative terms to the other things that we measured, it has the lowest impact. This year, the score remained 61. Last time we measured in 2021, it was up significantly. So maintaining that higher score is very good. And it is much higher than when we measured in 2015 when it was just at 50. All of the scores remain stable. And again, just because the impact is low doesn't mean that improvement in that area won't have any effect on the overall satisfaction. It just means in relative terms that wouldn't be the area to put all your resources in. We did ask how could the process of developing the state plan be improved. I'm sure some of this is no surprise. Comments regarding engaging each eligible entity for success stories, no matter how big or small. The stories are impactful to all of us and may be a great motivation to create like opportunities. Involve a variety of stakeholders representing human services providers, service recipients, municipal leaders, faith-based communities. And another one, it's not easy to have input in an online environment. I would prefer in-person group meetings. So again, just a few comments to give you a flavor for what we heard, but lots of great comments that you should consider. We do ask kind of an overall question that kind of allows them to provide whatever type of feedback they want, not specific to any particular driver. And that question is, what more could OCS do to help the states and eligible entities meet the needs of low-income people in the state? As you can see, these tend to be a little bit more longer and robust, given the nature of the question. Lots of good feedback here, lots of information. Because they're so long, I'm not going to read any of these to you, but would encourage you to take some time to review these open ends because it provides some really good feedback from the eligible entities. Next, we have the drivers of satisfaction, the top scoring. We provide these just so that it offers you an opportunity in terms of best practices. If you have a particular area that you're needing improvement in, you can go ahead and reference these areas and find out, which states might be able to provide some best practices and some ideas and some networking around those specific. So we do identify those for each of the drivers of satisfaction. Next, we'll look at the state results. We did have one driver score, development of CSBG state plan, that was significantly different from state association respondents compared to eligible entities. So that score was 70 versus 61. The remainder of the scores were pretty comparable between the eligible entities and the state associations. When we look at the state association CSI scores, how they range and where they bucket, we saw that this year 47% fell in the 90 to 100. 13% were in 80 to 89, another 13% in 77 to 79, 3% were in 60 to 69, and 23% were 49 and under. So that just gives you a sense for how they bucketed. Please remember that we're talking about percentages over a very small number, so they can change with just the switch of one or two. Next, we'll walk through some recommendations. So with respect to communication, our key finding was that although considered a strength based on its relatively high performance score of 76, communication continues to hold the most potential when working to improve CSI. In terms of a recommendation, we recommend that you maintain focus on providing clear and accurate communication to eligible entities, work to understand and address the lower scores for frequency of communication, collect feedback that provides insight into whether the lower frequency score is a result of perception that communication is too frequent or not frequent enough, and work to strike a balance that aligns with the feedback you receive. Usefulness and consistency of communication continue to be lower scoring, suggesting that specific focus should be placed on determining the types of communication that are considered most useful and valuable to the eligible entities. Additionally, working with staff to improve the consistency of communication is recommended. We did hear a lot about that in some of the open-ended comments. Developing documents that address frequently or not so frequently asked questions could help ensure eligible entities are getting consistent answers and guidance that help improve performance. Consistency is mentioned in a lot of the open ends, and a review of them could provide some additional clarity on specific concerns or opportunities for improvement. Here we list the highest scoring states for communication. Those are Utah, North Dakota, Wisconsin, Virginia, Maryland, and Kentucky. Next, for monitoring and corrective action, our key finding was the 2025 score for monitoring and corrective action indicates that notable improvement has been achieved, reaching the highest score measured since 2015. Due to the relatively high impact value, further improvement in this area will drive the CSI score higher. Although improved over time, the current score of 75 does offer plenty of room for improvement. The attribute performance scores and the open ends corroborate the need for more consistency in the monitoring process and timeliness in the feedback in providing the final reports. Consider implementing training for monitors that emphasizes the importance of consistency. If not available, develop monitoring checklists that provide guidance to new staff responsible for monitoring to ensure that consistency across the board. Checklists to eligible entities ahead of time can set expectations and allow them to prepare. And we also recommend investigating the root causes for the delays in providing timely reports and work to address them. The states receiving the highest scores for monitoring and corrective action are North Dakota, Utah, Kentucky, Virginia, Wisconsin, and Iowa. In terms of linkages, our key finding was that the scores for the linkage driver show signs of decline and linkages remain among the higher impacts. While the score decrease is not statistically significant, all three attributes show directional decreases with scores ranging from 64 to 66, so definitely on the lower side. These scores are among the lowest and provide opportunity for improvement. In relative terms, improvement in this area will provide a strong return on the time and effort invested in terms of driving the CSI higher. We would recommend considering increasing communication regarding CSBG efforts to create linkages to ensure that eligible entities who may be interested or could benefit from these efforts are aware they exist. Continued efforts to increase the number of partnerships established and the effectiveness of these partnerships is important, but unless sufficient communication is shared regarding these efforts, they may go unnoticed and the opportunity to improve the CSI score would be unrealized. Open-ended comments confirm that more efforts in this area, as well as more communication around them, is needed. A review of these comments provides specific context for what eligible entities perceive is needed in the area of linkages and should be used to gain an appreciation for perspectives. The following states received the highest score in linkages: North Dakota, Utah, Virginia, Wisconsin, Maryland, and Louisiana. In terms of distribution of funds, our key finding there was that the driver has experienced a significant 4-point decline since 2025. Notable decreases in both distribution of funds attribute scores, the degree to which the state's distribution of funds ensured there was no interruption in services delivered to clients, and the quality of the state's process for executing grant awards. Those were both the two attributes that were measured, contributed to the lower score, and the score for quality of the process falling to 68. While the survey doesn't ask an open question about distribution of funds, open-ended comments in the response to the more overall question did address this particular item. Many comments were related to the distribution of funds. Among these comments, timeliness was a common theme. This driver experienced a notable improvement from 2015 to 2019, but since then it's declined from the baseline performance. So would encourage you to take a look at distribution of funds as an area for improvement and see what can be done to reverse some of the downward trend that we're seeing. A renewed focus on improving the quality and timeliness of the process for distributing funds is needed. A review of changes to the process over time is recommended to identify the root causes of the decline in performance. The following states had the highest scores in distribution of funds. Those were Utah, North Dakota, Virginia, Nebraska, and Tennessee. And that concludes my comments. As I mentioned, there is an appendix with some more data for those of you who really like to dig down into the data and see some additional numbers around the performance. But at this time, I would like to open up the floor. If you have any questions, would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Kelly. It was quite a bit of information, and we are very glad that you are here to break it down for us. I would make one general observation. I might make a couple, but you talked a lot about the distribution of funds, and I think the network probably understands that that is a trickle down. There's lots of things that determine how quickly funds can be distributed, how funds come from Congress to us, from us to the grant recipients, from the grant recipients to the eligible entities. So we recognize we're not surprised by that number at all, because there's certainly a lot that goes along with that process. There were several questions that came in to both the chat and the Q&A pod while you were presenting, and so I will attempt to get those to you now. One of them came in shortly after you went over the slide that contained the model for the ACSI, if you might want to go back and refer to that one. A general question, yes, the slides and the presentation will be released as soon as we are able to release this information. The one question related to this: is it correct to say that the development of the CSBG plan has the least impact on the CSI, on the ACSI score, because the teal box has zeros?
That's exactly correct. I just wanted to clarify that doesn't mean it means nothing. It was important enough to measure. It's certainly an important part of the process and of the relationship. But relative to things like communication and monitoring and corrective action, yes, it would be a much lower priority because it would have less impact.
Thank you. There was a question about whether or not the ACSI was done in 2023, the one that is for grant recipients to speak to OCS, and the answer is yes, it was done in 2023. The next one should be done in 26-27. If we are able to do that, we will continue doing it. It is our intention to continue utilizing the ACSI, so I wanted to answer that question. The next question was DOE weatherization program used to use the ACSI, but in recent years, the grant recipients have not seen that. Is DOE still utilizing the ACSI as a tool?
Unfortunately, we have not been able to engage with them. I think there's been a lot of change in the leadership there, at least the ones that we interfaced with. We would love to be able to provide that feedback and conduct that survey. So if there's any way you can communicate how important it is to you, we would be pleased to work with them again.
Okay. There was a question about receiving state level data, and the states all received their data. Was it back in February, Kelly? I believe it was.
I believe it was.
And so I don't know, each state may have a different method for how they share that information with the eligible entities beyond what is in the actual state plan. I would say that there is no mandate on how states share that information, but certainly we encourage them to utilize and share the information with the network for the purpose of improving the satisfaction scores, and overall operations is the key to that. So let me move to the next question. How will, well, oh, you're asking why the slides don't reflect the 2023 ACSI results. So there are a few different ACSI surveys that are conducted. One is where the grant recipients are giving their responses that are based on the federal offices operations. And the one that we are talking about today is the one where the eligible entities at the local level are providing responses to the state. Am I correct about that, Kelly?
That's exactly right. Yep.
Okay. Okay. I'm going to go back over to the chat box because there were a few there too. I didn't realize that there was a survey about the state association too. Were those sent to the state association representatives?
It was the same survey, and we sent them based on the sample that you provided, Verna, to the state associations.
Yeah, and so the question is, I think if you can go back into the chat and clarify, is the question, do we send the results to the state associations? Because if that is the question, we only send the results to the state lead administrator. We do not send results to the state association. There was another question, Kelly. Is there any correlation between the number of respondents and the score?
There should not be. We've got, as I mentioned, we've got a 90% for the aggregate, a 90% plus or minus one. But we don't typically see, the correlation. More responses doesn't mean a higher score or a lower score. It just gives us a measure of how representative it is of the group. And at this point, with this kind of response, we feel pretty confident that what we're seeing here in the data is very accurate in terms of the feelings of the eligible entities.
Okay, and I'll reiterate, this question was in a similar question was in the chat and in the Q&A pod. How can we receive the information about our state's CSVG lead agency results? Is there an expectation for that information to be shared? Again, the state reports have been shared with the state lead agencies, and we welcome and encourage them to share those results beyond what's in the state plans. However, there is not a mandate on how or when the states must share that information. Were state associations invited to submit scores comments on this one along with, yes, state associations were able to provide responses. I'm not seeing any additional questions at this point, Kelly, but I'm going to pause just for a second to see if you have any additional clarifying information that you would like to provide, and just to see if there are any additional questions that are coming in. There was a question about the cleaning, the survey is sent directly to the eligible entities. How is the contact list refreshed? There were several ways that we worked towards making sure we got the correct information. We work with our state administrators, we work with our national partners, we work with associations. We work with the information that we have that comes in on the eligible entity list. So we worked across the board to try to make sure that that information was as current as it could be. And when there were responses that were returned because the address had changed, we worked to make sure we found out where that survey should go and sent a new link to make sure that everyone was able to respond. I think I have covered all of the questions that I have seen. Let me just pause for one more moment to make sure. I'm going to also ask my backup. Jessica, did you see any questions that I did not cover for Kelly?
No, I did not.
All right. Well, I think we have covered everyone's questions. Kelly, you can hang tight just in case anyone comes on before the end with the
Sure.
question. But I would ask that we show some virtual love again to Kelly for the information that she has provided. We really appreciate your expertise and your breaking down the information so that we can utilize this information as we continue to try to enhance our programming. So we really appreciate your time with us today, Kelly. Um, I would ask that you take a moment if we could launch the polling questions at this time. I would say if for some reason you can't respond using the polling feature, you can either enter your response in the chat or in the Q&A pod because we want to make sure that everyone is able to respond. The first question, and we'll leave it here for just a moment, was how useful was the webinar today to break down the results of the ACSI. Please note the rating scale where 5 is extremely useful to 1, which is not useful at all. So we'll give you a few moments. If you would please respond to the polling question of how useful today's webinar is. We'll give it just a minute just to make sure that people have had an opportunity to respond. While you're responding to this poll question, Kelly, there is a question. Do we have the number of respondents per state?
We do have them. I don't have them in the deck. Verna, I'm not sure how you would like to share them, but we can provide them if that's
Okay.
appropriate.
This came in from an anonymous attendee. If that attendee would please email me directly, we will do a follow-up on that for you. And I think we can go to the next poll. Thank you, Jessica. The next poll is if you would tell us how you plan to utilize the information that was shared for the survey. And there are several responses there. If you don't mind, please tell us all of the ways. This is multiple choice. You can tell us all of the ways that you intend to utilize this data if you intend to utilize it, and we certainly hope that you do. To explore strategies for enhancing communications, to support clarifying monitoring processes, to further develop partnerships, to strengthen linkages, to inform planning for training and technical assistance, to adjust the plan usage of discretionary funds, to guide the development of state plans, perhaps all of the above. But if you could take a moment to respond to that polling question as well. And then I have a few updates for you all today, and then we will close out our webinar. Okay. So by way of updates and reminders, I just want to let you all know that our final round of quarterly calls for fiscal year 25 are set to kick off on July 15th. We are planning to host the calls regionally. However, I need to let you know, pending receipt of approval for our state and tribal plan webinar series, we may have to consolidate the calls as we did during the third quarter. So please be attentive to communications over the next few weeks, as we may have to pivot very quickly to make sure we can accommodate everything. State and tribal plans will still be due on September the 1st. Again, we are awaiting approval for the release of the action transmittals, which has really delayed us in releasing the webinar dates. The ones that we previously planned have already passed, but tentatively, we are asking you to mark your calendars as we hope to have OLDC live for plans not later than July 7th. And in addition, we hope to facilitate our webinars July 29th through the 31st. I realize this is not definitive information, but exact dates and times will be released as soon as we receive approval. I just wanted to give you the tentative timeframe so that you can be aware of that. As we mentioned during our quarterly calls, all recipients are encouraged to review and revise, if needed, all of your plans, your services, your strategies, and your planned expenditures that may be impacted by executive orders and any guidance released by the secretary. Our action transmittals will address this more, but for now, please note that there are no changes to the plan submission date or plan submission format as prescribed in Section 676 of the CSBG Act. I would just say with that, I don't see any additional questions. I just wanted to pause and make sure. We thank you all for expressing your gratitude towards us as well. I would say thank you for your continued efforts to grow and strengthen CSBG and fortify the communities that we serve. This wraps up our ACSI webinar and actually concludes my reminders. So thank you all for all that you do to continue to serve communities with low incomes. We appreciate you, and we certainly hope that you all have a very productive day. Thank you again, everyone. We appreciate you.
Thank you, Verna.
Thank you.